The New York Knicks are back at it again with some more recent NBA trade news and trade drama. Very much unexpected, I wouldn't think, but it is currently now being reported that the Knicks are very hesitant in offering Fred VanVleet a max contract. This is all being reported by Mark Berman. Now, what's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I've got some more NBA news to talk about with you guys. Again, just kicking it off straight away with the fact that how and why would the Knicks be considering offering Fred VanVleet a max contract in the first place? Like, I mean, a max contract, yes, it can be about $28 million to $30 million per season, but this guy, max contracts in today's NBA usually tend to go up quite a bit, and it's not like they are front-loaded. They are usually loaded, towards the end. For example, I believe Chris Paul started off his new contract on like $36 million or something like that, but in the last year it will end up getting to about maybe $44 million, I believe. I think it's, again, it's probably not 100% correct, but that's just an example that I have worked up on a similarity on what this could potentially be. So, in a way, a max contract for VanVleet could eventually start off as maybe $28 million and develop into $30 million, $32 million, etc. A player like Fred VanVleet, yes, he is relatively young and is a very talented player, but he is not a player that deserves the max at all. In fact, I think he's about a $20 million per season type of player. I know that the Knicks and the Pistons being very, very desperate that, a situation could have been developed where, who knows, maybe he could have gotten $25 million or so as a, overpaid type of deal, again, considering those two franchises are relatively desperate for a point guard. But if VanVleet is requiring the max to actually go to the New York Knicks, I think it's just made the Knicks' decision way more clearer on what player they should be going out to trade for. Should it be VanVleet? Should they sign VanVleet, or should they go out and get Chris Paul? It's been the very big discussion now that they will most likely end up with one of them. Again, the Knicks are looking to target some all-star caliber type of players. We've heard they've been interested in DeMar DeRozan, Chris Paul, Victor Oladipo, Danilo Gallinari, Christian Wood, who's a developing young promising player, VanVleet, who kind of fits into that category as well. These type of players the Knicks have been very, very interested in. But now, if you were to ask a Knicks fan, and just, let's just say me, who would I rather have, Fred VanVleet on the max or Chris Paul on an overpaid contract? I'm still saying Chris Paul. Now, I know there will be some that will disagree with me on that, but the reason why Chris Paul would make so much more sense for the New York Knicks is just based on the fact that the Knicks desperately need a point guard to come in and develop this young core. I feel like the reason they haven't had a young core develop in so long now is because they've never given them, the necessary tools or the necessary veterans / playmaking to be able to go and do that. You can't expect, a player like RJ Barrett to develop into a future all-star if his future point guard is going to be, Dennis Smith Jr. or Frank Ntilikina. That's not going to happen. Ntilikina's role is not to play make. Ntilikina's role is to be a defensive-minded guard who, again, that's his main role, is defense. You can't expect a player like RJ Barrett to develop into anything special with a player like that. But if you were to give him Chris Paul, who has single-handedly pretty much taken the Oklahoma City Thunder to the playoffs while developing their young core, then of course they're going to contend for the playoffs. And of course players like RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, etc. are going to develop very, very nicely. So, again, yes, Chris Paul's on a little bit of an overpaid contract, but not to mention that, yes, Chris Paul will help, develop the young core and potentially take them to the playoffs as well. But just based on the fact that he will lure in so many free agents and so many players who will maybe even request a trade to the New York Knicks. For example, it is highly rumored that DeMar DeRozan, Danilo Gallinari, and Carmelo Anthony all really, really want to play with Chris Paul. We've seen that, Carmelo and Chris Paul have been close friends for a long time now. Gallinari has just recently played with Paul and very much enjoyed his stint in OKC. And then DeMar DeRozan as well is looking to potentially leave San Antonio, even if it does require him to go on a cheaper deal. So, if all of these three players are willing to potentially join the New York Knicks with Chris Paul, then that's just, again, a lot more than what they would have previously gotten if they were just to not trade for him. So, the way I see it is, you can bring VanVleet, you can overpay him, and yes, he might be able to develop this young core, but he's not going to bring any players in. He's not going to really take this team to the playoffs. But if they were able to get a player like Chris Paul would be able to persuade players like, Gallinari, who's a 20-point per game type of player, DeMar DeRozan, who's a very similar type player, in the 20 points per game, Carmelo Anthony as well, who's a veteran who I definitely feel like it could be the sixth man of the team, could even get some starting minutes here and there. I could definitely see all of those players potentially joining the Knicks as well. So in doing so, if they were able to go out and get Chris Paul, they would have a starting five of Chris Paul at point guard, DeMar DeRozan at shooting guard, RJ Barrett at small forward, Danilo Gallinari at power forward, and Mitchell Robinson at center. That starting five would definitely be a lethal team that could definitely make the playoffs and contend to be like a fifth or a fourth seed, I would assume. And the best part about it is the team wouldn't be overly old. Like, yes, DeMar, Paul, and Gallinari, I believe, are all over the age of 30 or so, I think. But RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson are both under 22 years old, I believe. And not just that, players like Frank Ntilikina, Dennis Smith Jr. even, Kevin Knox if they keep him and don't trade him for Paul. Whoever they draft at pick 8, and maybe some more younger players that they might potentially go out and sign, will all develop really nicely with a player like Chris Paul. So, I feel like the decision is pretty clear now for the New York Knicks. If they were to be able to get, Fred VanVleet on a $20 to $25 million a season type of deal, I would consider doing that deal instead of the Chris Paul deal. I would probably still prefer to do the Chris Paul deal, but again, some might say VanVleet. But if they were to, again, if VanVleet wants the max contract of $30 million for him to actually leave Toronto, then that just makes the decision so much more clearer and so much more easier for the Knicks management, and it now becomes a pretty much 100% that you would rather Chris Paul on the team. Because yes, you are paying an extra $10 million maybe per season, but you are developing the young core twice as fast and twice as good as what VanVleet would be able to do, and you would be able to bring in, these veteran to all-star type of caliber players with Chris Paul on the team. So that's why I think it's pretty clear and pretty simple on what the New York Knicks need to do now. Again, I think VanVleet has kind of sold his options short now, because saying that he wants the max is going to turn a lot of teams off. Like, the Pistons might fall into it, but I don't feel like the Knicks will, because the Knicks actually have options, again, Chris Paul, etc., while the Pistons are kind of locked into a sort of way where they don't really have options or assets to go after a player such as, and like Chris Paul. So it's going to be very interesting to kind of see how this all goes. I think it's going to go down to the wire on which player they get. I feel like, again, Fred VanVleet might have sold himself short a little bit. He might have to go back to Toronto for about $15 million a season, as asking for the max, I think it's just outrageous. And again, might have sold himself a little bit short, as I don't feel like a team is going to offer him that. And teams like the Pistons and the Knicks definitely may actually pull out of the deal, which he could definitely lose a couple $1 million and may have to re-sign with the Raptors on cheap money. So I feel like this is going to be very interesting. It's going to go down to the wire, I would think, on who the Knicks are going to go and trade for / sign. But of course, I would really like to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on this down below. Should the New York Knicks go out and get Chris Paul? Should they go out and get Fred VanVleet? Again, I'd definitely really like to know all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. But of course, don't forget to subscribe to my gaming channel, EmmaIro/Vlog channel. Don't forget to check out my podcast as well if you haven't already. Again, links for them will all be in the description down below. As I was saying, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts and opinions down below. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.